Good morning, and welcome to First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, FPC to our members and friends, a welcoming spiritual community. My name is Cheryl Lafayette, and I serve as a member of the Climate Change Task Force. Our minister is the Reverend Cindy Landrum. Today is Sunday, April 25th, 2021. Our Earth Sunday service has been created by members of the First Parish Climate Change Task Force. First Parish sits on land that is the original homelands of the Nipmuc tribal nations, as well as the Massachusetts peoples and the Pawtucket tribe. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. If this is your first time with us, we welcome you. We invite you to check out our webpage, fpc-stowe-acton.org, for news and information. You can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts called FPC Announce, and for our email forum, the FPC Forum. Our Welcoming and Membership Development Coordinator is Jolene Trotta. She can help connect you to information about our many activities. Our FPC building is currently closed due to the pandemic. If you need to enter the building for any reason, please check with Reverend Cindy or our board president, Katie Weeks.
A very, very long time ago, far in the very deepest guts of our sun, hydrogen atoms fused into helium, creating photons, which then started a journey of 100,000 years to reach the sun's surface. Then, after another 8 minutes traveling through space, they finally arrived at our solar cell and then lit today's chalice as an invitation for us to embrace our gratitude for the earth. Let us join the FPC Town Park Singers in our hymn, "The Earth is Our Mother."
Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. From all that dwell below the skies, let words of love and peace arise. Let joyful
My name is Barbara Robb, and I am a member of the Climate Change Task Force, and I am going to do the message for all ages today. I will be reading a book that is about what one girl tries to do to help climate change. And the book is called Stand Up, Speak Up, a story inspired by the climate change revolution by Andrew Joyner. There's not a lot of words in this book, so you really have to pay attention to the pictures. Wake up, dress up, drink up, eat up, meet up. Wonder where she's going. She has gone to a rally or a protest about climate change, and you can see all the signs that are up. I ride a bike. It's our future. Science, not silence. I speak for the trees. Eat more vegetables. All different actions that can be taken. Rise up. Cheer up. Finish up. All done and heading home. Eat up. Drink up, stay up. Looks like she's watching the news, and the TV shows some coverage of the march they were at, and the newscaster says, coming up, and then the news that she reports is wildfires and the plastic garbage that's in the Pacific and flooding. She's a little discouraged with all of this. And her parents put her to bed and they say, rest up. But her eyes are wide open. Still up. Think up. Right up. What's up? Listen up. She woke up her parents because she has got an idea. The next day, they all go to the town hall and turn up. She gives a speech. Stand up, speak up, hands up. I think she asked who wants to help. Sign up. Big line of people ready to help. And then all these people start taking different actions to help the environment. I see some kids are riding bikes instead of taking cars someplace. There's a beekeeper here. These kids are doing a trash cleanup and they're planting a garden. And they are composting and they're swapping and mending their clothes rather than throwing them away. And she's got a table that says, ask me about renewable energy, zero waste, no plastic straws, cut carbon dioxide. And this page says, show up. All those people showed up to help. And everywhere, young people are standing up and speaking up. I'm not going to read all of these, but every one of those pictures that you see is a young person who has tried to do something to save the environment. And there's people from all over the world. This is Hildia Flava Nakabue, who's from Uganda. And she has talked with world leaders about what it's like to live with climate change in Africa. And there's Greta Thunberg. Some of you may have heard of her. She inspired the school strike for climate. And all of these kids have done something. So it's very inspiring. And I hope that the kids and the adults take action to help climate change. Thank you.
Our reading today is from prayers of the people from the United Nations Environmental Sabbath Service. We will do it as a responsive reading, so if everyone would join me preceding each line with the phrase, "We join with the earth and with each other." We join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to renew the forests, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the seas, to rejoice the sun, to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recall our destiny, to renew our spirits, to reinvigorate our bodies. We join with the earth and with each other to create the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children. We join with the earth and with each other as a many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life.
And now it's time for the sharing of our gifts. This month, we share our weekly offering with the Southeast India Project. Checks may be made to First Parish Church. Pledges may be sent to the attention of the Pledge Secretary, Post Office Box 215, Stowe, Mass. 01775. Donations may be sent to the attention of the Treasurer, 353 Great Road, Stowe, Mass. 01775. Or donate online at fpc-stowe-acton.org/donate, or by text to 978-310-3309. And now our offering, "The Road Not Taken" by Randall Thompson, sung by the FPC Choir.
Hello. For our sermon today, we have 3 speakers from FPC who care deeply about the effects global warming will have on all of us. Our theme for this service is Listen to the Earth, Speak for the Earth. And each of our speakers will let you know what that means to them.
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here with all of you today in recognition and celebration of Earth Day. We were, for those of us on the panel, we were provided a prompt for our discussions here today. And the prompt we were given is to talk about something related to climate change that evoked an emotional response in us. And the sort of topic that I chose to share with you for the next few minutes is Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, and what happened in the aftermath of Katrina. So as you probably recall, Hurricane Katrina left more than 1,800 people dead. The number may even be higher than that. People still are unaccounted for. And as you know, so many people fled the area in the storm and in the aftermath of the floods. And Hurricane Katrina caused more than $100 billion in damage, destroyed or compromised over 800,000 units, and left, thousands and thousands homeless. And oftentimes during the storm itself and the aftermath of the flooding, we would hear that white Americans saw the storm as a case of bad luck. And there are quotes in newspapers about how there was just unprecedented incompetence that spread pain equally across the Gulf Coast, regardless of race. But when you really dig into the details, what we see is that systemic racism and the challenges with the infrastructure and the management of the infrastructure in New Orleans did not bear itself out, did not burden white Americans and African Americans equally or equitably. In fact, we saw African Americans overburdened by the devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina. And this really has a lot to do with segregation, income inequality, and quite honestly, decades and decades worth of policies that impacted where people had choices around where they could live and the choices that people did not have in being able to decide where they lived and making sure that they were safe in the places that they had in terms of options for where they lived. So we see this is an example of, if you thought that everything was sort of spread equally, that this is what the devastation looked like from the helicopters. But as I said, we know that the devastation was not borne and not carried equally by Black and white Americans at Katrina. And oftentimes what we saw are Black Americans who were stranded on rooftops. Well over 80% of people who were really impacted by Katrina lived closer to the coast and lived in places that were a lot cheaper to afford, given income inequality in our country. But unfortunately, it also meant that people were risking their lives because those houses were and those apartment buildings and those dwellings were directly in the flood zone. And so when I think about climate change, I think about the disproportionate impacts on communities all across our country, low-income communities, immigrant communities, and particularly our communities of color. And that it's really difficult for me to think about climate change in the absence of thinking about systemic racism and the policies that got us to this place where people are living completely different and separate kinds of lives. So that's what I wanted to highlight in sort of how I'm thinking about climate change, the policies that I'm trying to, advocate for up at the State House, the conversations that I have with constituents across the 14th Middlesex District, as well as all across the state. I'm always looking at what are the impacts on public health and well-being as we are taking up key climate change policies. I'm also looking at who is impacted by the kinds of policies that we're trying to pass. And I hope that those are the kinds of conversations that we can continue to have, both in our state, but also in our country, because this devastation, it really takes a toll on so many of us. And we know we want to create a more equitable and just society, because we see the value as Unitarian Universalists in seeing that everything and everybody is interconnected. And I think the example of Katrina really highlights, for me and for so many of us, an emotional response to climate change and the devastation, but also just how our humanity is wrapped up in each other. And I think we would all be hard pressed to look at pictures like this, where people, our fellow Americans, are stranded on top of rooftops because they didn't have other options for where they could flee to safety. Perhaps they didn't have access to transportation, or they weren't part of, receiving early information to evacuate. Or maybe they're just really concerned about, leaving the loved ones behind who weren't able to travel. So these are the kinds of things that I think are really important for us as a congregation, as a district, as a state, to really be thinking about and to be reflecting on for this Earth Day, and for all the Earth Days moving forward, and every other single day, all 364 other days of the year, thinking about the interconnectedness of all kinds of issues when you're thinking about housing, transportation, systemic racism, who has access to education and jobs, and of course, how we're going to protect our environment and our climate for generations that are here now and all future generations. So thank you for being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Well, good morning, everybody, on this Earth Day. And as we celebrate Earth Day and we consider the Earth and how we have affected it and what we have done to it, I'd like to spend some time this morning describing how the Earth also affects us, its motion, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. As you know, December 26, 2004, off the coast of Indonesia, the Earth shifted, right? The floor of the ocean dropped over 20 feet and set off a wave across the bottom of the ocean, traveling 600 miles an hour, and it reached Indonesia and India as a tsunami, with waves up to 20 feet high, causing significant damage. Over 15,000 people died on a stretch of Indian coast that was about 150 feet long. And as you could see here in this primitive fishing village, that the wave came in and did significant damage. But just north of here is one of the world's largest mangrove swamps. And where the mangrove swamp stood, the wave was broken up, its power reduced, and it traveled very, very little bit inland, compared to where the mangrove swamps had been removed along the river. And on that river, the wave continued up to the city of Cuddalore, where many thousands of people died and drowned because the mangrove swamp had been removed. Now, the tsunami, as you could see, caused incredible physical damage. It swept in, and within a half an hour, a third to one half of the people in these villages were gone, swept out to sea, never recovered. And for those that survived, not only did they lose their boats and their homes, but they lost their loved ones. Each village is about 300 people. Everyone knows each other or related, and they lost family and friends. This man standing in front of his house that's been partially destroyed could see in his eyes what he endured. He had two little children, and he was holding one in each arm. And in order to save one from the tsunami and grab onto a wall, he had to let the other child go. So the devastation didn't just destroy homes, it destroyed minds and hearts and souls. And this family, given fresh clothing, were able to stand in front of what was left of their home and still find a way to smile and believe in the future. You could see the wave marks on their building. This was the height of the wave. And this was their home. And for the people in these fishing villages, the ocean was more than just a source of sustenance where they fished every night. For them, it was a God that gave them life and peace. And their God had turned on them. Their God had sent a wave of fury that destroyed their lives and the lives of the people they loved. And because they didn't know what they had done wrong to cause this God's wrath, they feared that the storm, the wave, the death, the devastation could occur again the very next day. And what could they possibly do to live this way? Were they to flee, to move away from the ocean, give up their way of life because they had angered the God? Or were they just to live in temporary tents right by the ocean and try to rebuild and have a new life? And we built temporary housing for them, and they showed gratitude. But more, they showed courage, because in the midst of all this fear, they found the emotional and spiritual strength to continue, to say namaste, to say thank you, and to continue. And one of the first things we did was build a new schoolhouse for them. A schoolhouse with 1, 2, 3, 4 classrooms. And everyone had to get new clothing because there was no clothing left. And they found a way to continue their lives while still in fear. We built a new road so that we could get supplies to the village. We built a preschool so that the little babies could have a place to get food and a kitchen and sustenance, and the mothers could go inland and work in the rice paddies and earn some living for the families, because it would be another year before the men would have their boats rebuilt and could fish. And they went on. The children had nightmares, but they went on. They found faith and belief and courage. We built a bore well so that for the first time they would have fresh water. And we built toilets. And they found a way to move forward. Not to get rid of the fear, but to live with it and be courageous. To find ways to find simple pleasures and joy in the midst of the devastation. In the midst of all their fear and concern. And on Earth Day, we must remember how deeply entwined we are with the earth, as well as the earth is deeply entwined with us. Now, thank you for listening. And now I'm going to introduce Faye, and she's going to talk about her thoughts on Earth Day. Thank you.
Since my 17-year-old daughter Faye will be living with the effects of climate change longer than me, I asked her this question: how a climate or environmental experience has had an emotional effect on you and has personally impacted who you are, affecting the future choices you have made in your life. Her answer was that for her and others in her generation and younger, the question should be asked the other way around. She worries about the environment and the climate catastrophe that is unfolding with all her actions, and there isn't a single climate experience that comes to mind anymore. Given the litany of news stories about extreme weather that we all know is caused by carbon emission due to human activity, and yes, I include the climate deniers, and in particular most of the generation in power who are my age or older and can do the most to stop it, but instead put corporate profits above all and do nothing, I think her worries are justified and even prudent. When my daughter gets past the anxiety about the degraded world that will be left behind for her and her generation, it makes her angry, and I think she has every right to be angry. In the 1820s, Joseph Fourier and others realized that gases in the Earth's atmosphere can trap the sun's heat. Eunice Newton-Foote presented her paper, Circumstances Affecting the Heat of the Sun's Rays, at the 1856 American Association for the Advancement of Science, in which she theorized that adding carbon dioxide to the Earth's atmosphere would raise the temperature of the Earth. In 1896, Arvid Hagbaum calculated that CO2 emitted from burning coal was raising the temperature of the Earth, and since the 1950s, scientists have known that burning fossil fuels is causing the Earth to warm. Adults have known for over 70 years that we need to transition off fossil fuels, and we choose to put corporate profits and the short-term gains of the extractive economy, along with misinforming the public, ahead of our children's and grandchildren's future. A while ago, I was watching an interview with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and they were going on about how optimistic they were about technology solving the world's climate problems, and it occurred to me that I was watching two people who are representative of the demographic that benefited from the extractive economy, speculating about the optimism of a future that they will be dead before living. I think that's what makes younger people angry. The question that we are all left with is what we can do about it starting right now and moving forward. We can't go on living the way we are. We need a sudden and abrupt change in the way we live, in our relationship with the environment, and we have to do it in our neighborhood, as a country, and as a world. Every letter you write to our leaders at the city, state, and federal level, lobbying for legislation to transform our economy and lifestyles to carbon zero matters. Every environmental protest you attend matters. Whatever amount of money you have, every dollar you spend on supporting environmentally sustainable efforts matters. Installing solar panels, buying electric vehicles, and other ways of living that curb carbon emission and environmental damage matters. Educating yourself matters, and every dollar of your savings that is invested in environmentally sustainable companies and projects matters. If you don't want to do any of this for yourself, then do it for our children and the generations that we will be leaving behind.
This precious web of life on earth, inheritance of on earth, has every blessing freely given to ya. It is a
Our 7th UU principle is respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We are only a part, and we humans have been making a disastrous mess of that interconnected web for hundreds of years. However, Martin Luther King said the measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and crisis or controversy. Our Earth has reached a crisis point right now. Greta Thunberg admonishes us very personally that our house is on fire. She's right, and it is we humans who are responsible for that. Do we have the wisdom to take the actions that will reverse what we have done? Can we work individually and collectively to stabilize the balance of gases in the atmosphere so that our civilization survives? Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf, but who led a remarkable life, is quoted as saying, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." Go in peace.
Put out the fire, put out the fire, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. Put out the fire, put out the fire, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. We love you, we hear you, we commit to change our ways, not later, but sooner, right now, for your future. Youth can't wait, put out the fire. Women can't wait, put out the fire. Blind can't wait, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. For our children, put out the fire. And their children, put out the fire. And their children, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. For songbirds, for clean air, for the oceans and the lakes. Not later, but sooner, right now, for our future. Melting glaciers, put out the fire. Rising seas, put out the fire. Bleaching coral, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. Shrinking shoreline, put out the fire. Sinking island, put out the fire. Growing dry land, put out the fire. Our house is on fire. Let bees live, let trees grow, let the snow fall where it may. Not later,
on fire.